Oh, hey! I'm stoked to the max to serve you up another sweet and stellar take on an 80s anime here on Geekorama. Otaku Evolution, Spud. So get amped, cause it's time to start rapping about Legend of the Gold of Babylon. Lupin the Third. I love talking about this character and this franchise, and it's a great time to do it. Wonderful new TV shows, some great movies, and one on the way. New English dubbed versions produced using a great cast, and a lot of care put into releases. I can hardly think of a better time to be a fan than now. Kazuhiko Kato, known as Monkey Punch, was the creator of Lupin the Third, Master Thief, and sadly he passed recently. Up until his death, he was still trying to learn new ways of doing things, taking courses in digital art. Inspired by the art of Mort Drucker and Sergio Aragonés, Monkey Punch started producing manga in 1965. It was in 1967, in the first issue of Weekly Manga Action, that Lupin III made his debut, and since then has spawned decades of various media. One of the things it spawned was 1984's Lupin III Part 3, or as it's often known, the Pink Jacket series. This has proven to be quite a contentious show, with many people criticizing the overly loose, exaggerated character designs that departed from the previous series, and its inconsistent art style in general. However, one thing can't be denied, but often is that its actual animation quality is quite high for shows of its time and type. There's actually plenty of animation you can consider sakuga. But as somebody who's watched a handful of episodes, I find the storytelling lacking. Oftentimes an episode will just sort of stop, suddenly concluding with only a vague sense of finality. Even the better episodes can be confusing in their lack of structure, and some of the premises are just kind of dull. Interestingly enough, though, I could see some of the source code of later Lupin features, such as the first episode being a prototype for the Alcatraz Connection TV special, or another episode having a scene that reminds me of the later Hemingway Papers TV special. I bet I could find other episodes that later features mine for material if I watched more, but I've watched enough. I bring up the Pink Jacket series because the 1985 theatrical movie Legend of the Gold of Babylon is clearly taking a page out of its book with its design and comic sensibilities, relying on even more silly slapstick and sight gags than either parts 1 or 2. Strangely enough, though, the man helming the film was known more for dramas and action. That man? Seijun Suzuki. Though I have to admit, I've only ever seen one other movie by the man, and that movie was Tokyo Drifter. Tokyo Drifter is a good movie. Tokyo Drifter is a great movie. A movie about loyalty, obsession, and corruption. It has a very unique style to it, the way shots are framed, the sets, the action pieces and parody elements, and it has one of the best finales in any movie I've ever seen. Legend of the Gold of Babylon is not Tokyo Drifter. Legend of the Gold of Babylon is not a good movie. It is instead a bizarre, somewhat off-putting 30-car pile-up of ideas, gags, and overstretched scenes that barely fit together as a cohesive, or indeed even coherent, narrative. But it is a fascinatingly bad movie. A movie that should be seen.
It just so happens, Lupin, that my hearing is 20/20.
I think you're hearing things, Pops. Hey, knock it off! You can't catch me, Pops!
Lupin is pursuing the lost and hidden treasure of ancient Babylon, competing with a mob boss and his crew. Fujiko's loyalties are, as usual, suspect, as she bounces back and forth between Lupin and Marciano, and occasionally just to herself. Meanwhile, Inspector Zenigata is forced to drag around the contestants of the Miss ICPO beauty pageant wherever he goes, who try to assist him in capturing Lupin. There's not much for Jigen and Goemon to do aside from coming along with Lupin for the ride, but they do each get some notable moments. Jigen, for instance, going up against Mob Tough Kowalski.
Jigen, there'll be nothing left of you but bones.
And there's also a great scene where Goemon cuts lightning. The movie has some great set pieces like Lupin and Zenigata racing around a gigantic face on motorcycles. It's a great gag on its own and even has its own gags along the way. But as with most scenes in the feature, it goes on longer than necessary, beginning to drag to the point of irritation. The same thing goes with the scene on the train. Great setup. Marciano's goons want to kill Lupin, Zenigata and his posse want to arrest him, but our favorite thief seems somewhat oblivious to them at first. Everybody is acting at cross purposes, making a compelling farce, but again, it all goes on too long.
Hold it, Lupin!
There, that ought to do it. Okay, let's try that again. Ah, shit! Retinas! Seared like tuna steaks!
The chase in the desert? Excellent at first, grating by the end. Lupin and Fujigo struggling to stay afloat in the underground tower caverns? Tense for a minute or so, then you're checking the time. It seems like a lot of the goodwill the movie stores up is spent early and spoiled horribly because the writer or director clearly did not know when to end a scene. And even that aside, there's just this janky zaniness and weird concepts like the Miss ICPO thing that's just way too over the top even for Lupin.
Wow, I got that much? Ooh.
Lanky Lupin, you skip town while taking all your money. Spit the coins back in your face and laugh because it's funny.
Another bone I have to pick with this flick is all this ancient alien shit.
I know it sounds crazy.
Yeah, that nonsense. I know I'm going to sound like I'm... what's that thing you kids call it? Virtue signaling? But this ancient aliens theory is super racist. Yeah, it couldn't have been the brown people who lived in the impressive ancient cities that built the colossal structures. Oh, no, it has to be some kind of otherworldly beings, possibly from other planets that completed these arduous feats of construction. Yeah, I know, this is just a silly Lupin adventure, and even the ancient alien background is treated as kind of a gag in itself, so clearly no harm was meant. But the ancient alien phenomenon downplays the hard work that actual people put in ancient times, without our level of technology. Well, okay, the Lost Tower of Babylon in this feature is actually underneath Madison Square Garden in New York City.
New York City!
So I might be overthinking all this a bit. The writers certainly didn't think that much when they wrote this, because the finale is as batshit insane and frivolous as the rest of the movie. Which isn't to say it's necessarily bad, since at least it doesn't go on forever like some scenes, and Lupin doesn't just let the treasure get away from him so easily the way he did in Cagliostro. He's a bit more the usual treasure-loving Lupin we know and love from most of the entries, and horny besides which. But boy, is this movie a collection of odd decisions. I guess fans of Lupin the Third Part 3 would be the best audience for this feature, but even that is reductive to both this title and that show, because while there is a general surplus of uneven storytelling and zaniness, the same could be said of certain non-Pink Jacket episodes or features. I mean, Part 2 catered to a younger audience than Part 1, but there was still plenty of dark shit in there as well as goofiness. And it's not like it was overall more mature than Part 3 was. And even Part 3 had the odd good episode now and then. I suppose there's really no use in painting these things with such a broad brush, but there is a general tendency. And I think I prefer Mamo and Cagliostro to Babylon, despite even those two having different tones. My real issues with this movie stem mostly from its lack of narrative tightness. A few edits and this would have been a much stronger adventure. As it is, it does have its moments, but when it comes to Suzuki, it's definitely not his best work. If you're interested enough, the movie is available from Discotheque Media. Well, that's enough for this review. I am wiped out, home fries. I am legit cashed out, Spanglers. I'm gonna go chill with some lemon lime slice, some zuh, and a full 3-hour Beans Baxter marathon. This is Mike, Penguin Truth, and next time is the final entry of this year's 80s month here on Otaku Evolution. Crusher Joe, the Ultimate Weapon Ash. That's a mouthful. Until then, see ya!